Welcome students. Today we will discuss about industrial laws. So now let's see the syllabus of industrial law. The unit 1 discuss about Factories Act 1948 definitions and health, safety, welfare, working hours of adults, employment of women, employment of young persons and leave with wages. And to the unit 2 Industrial Disputes Act 1947. So it deals with definitions, authorities under the Act 1947, reference of disputes, then procedures and powers of authorities. And the next one is strikes and lockouts, layoff and enrichment, special provisions relating to layoff, enrichment and lockouts. And to the third unit, we will discuss about the Workmen Compensation Act 1923, the need for the Act, scope and courages of the Act, definitions, employers' liability for compensation in section 3, including theory of national extension and occupational diseases, and then defenses available to employer. And the next one is amount and distribution of compensation, notice and claim, medical examination, obligations and rights of employers and employees, and the last one is schedules to the Act. And to the unit 4 is fully based on Employees State Insurance Act 1948, and it deals with the objects, definition, ESI corporation, functions, contribution and recovery benefits, penalties for false claims. And the last unit, unit 5, it's fully based on Employment Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provision Act 1952, objects, definition, Provident Fund schemes, contribution and recovery, and last one is penalties and offences. So let's discuss about unit 1, Factories Act 1948. So in Factories Act 1948, it fully deals with the main objectives of the Factory Act 1948 is to ensure safety measures and promote health and welfare of workers. And the second objective is to regulate the working hours like leave and employment of women and young persons. And the third objective is to ensure adequate working condition including cleanliness, ventilation, lighting, etc. And the last objective is to prevent exploitation of labor and provide statutory rights. So let's see what this Factories Act 1948 says about. In the Factories Act 1948 is an important piece of legislation in India that regulates labor in factories. So its main purpose is to ensure the health, safety, welfare and proper working condition of every workers employed in a factories. And to the next one is, let's see the definition of factory, worker, occupier. So the first one is factory, any premises. So any premises or any building which have 10 or more than 10 workers using a power or 20 or more workers without using power engaged in a manufacturing process is called as factory. And to the next one is worker. So a person employed, he may be or she may be directly or indirectly employed in a manufacturing process. That person is called as worker. And then occupier, the person who has ultimate control over the factory's affairs is known as occupier. And to the next one, let's see the main provision, health provision under Factories Act 1948. So the first and foremost provision in the Factories Act 1948 deals with health. So health defines that the Factories Act 1940 contains detailed provisions in chapter 3, section 11 to 20 to ensure the health and hygiene of workers in the factories. These provisions aim to maintain a clean and safe working environment and prevent health hazards. So the health provisions, as before I said, section 11 to 20. So let's see the sections and health provisions all together. So the first one is cleanliness. It deals with section 11, and second one is section 12 deals with disposal of waste, and section 13 deals with ventilation and temperature. Section 14 deals with dust and fumes control. Section 18 deals with drinking water. Section 19 deals with latrines and urinals. To the second provision is safety. So safety deals with some of the few provisions are there. So section 21 deals with fencing of machinery. Section 22 deals with work on or near machinery in motion. Section 23 deals with safety of building and machinery. Section 29 deals with lifting machines, chains and ropes. And section 31 deals with pressure plant. Section 34 deals with exercise weights. And section 35 deals with protection of eyes. So next provision is welfare provision. So welfare provision according to the Factories Act 1948 deals with, it also has some of the provisions are there. So the next one is then Factories Act 1948 include welfare measures in chapter 5, section 42 to 50 to ensure that workers enjoy basic facilities and live with dignity and well-being. These provisions focus on the comfort, convenience and health of worker beyond safety and hygiene. Next, the first aid appliances deals with section 42 and section 46 deals with canteens, 47 restrooms and lunchrooms, 48 creches, 49 welfare offices, 50 powers to make rules. So next one is working hours of adults under the Factories Act 1948. So the total working hours of adults is maximum 48 hours and then 9 hours a day maximum. Weekly holiday usually in Sunday in section 52, and overtime wages double the normal rate in section 57. Restrictions on women working night shifts between 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. unless exceptions apply. Specific rules for child and adolescent labours. So the Factories Act 1948 contains specific provisions in chapter 4, section 51 to 66 to regulate the working hours of adult workers aged 18 years above. The next slide is employment of women. So under the Factories Act 1948, the employment of women is regulated with special provisions to ensure their safety, welfare and working conditions. So these are also have some of the provisions of women employers. So let's see the provisions of women employers. The first one is working hours, section 66. And prohibition of night work, provisions for welfare in chapter 5, employment during certain conditions, prohibition of hazardous work and maternity benefits. And the next one is employment of young persons under the Factories Act 1948. So the Factories Act 1948 lays down specific provisions in chapter 7, section 67 to 77 for the employment of young persons, which includes children below 14 years. These provisions aim to protect minors from exploitation and hazardous working conditions. And the next one is leave with wages. So let's see about what is leave with wages. So leave with wages in Factories Act 1948 deals with some of the sections are there. So in section 79 to 82 deals with leave with wages in Factories Act 1948. The first one is eligibility. So let's see what is eligibility. A worker becomes entitled to annual leave with wages if he or she has worked for at least 240 days or more in a calendar year in a factory. And then quantum of leave. Adult workers have 1 day leave for every 20 days of work performed in the previous calendar year, and child worker 1 day leave for every 15 days of work performed. Then carry forward of leave. Let's see what is carry forward of leave. Unused leave can be carried forward. Maximum accumulation adults up to 30 days and children up to 40 days. And next one is wages during leave. Workers are entitled to wages at the same rate as daily average of their total full-time earnings, including allowances like DA, cash equivalent of concessional sales, etc., but excluding overtime and bonus. And the next one is advance payment. If leave for 4 or more days for adults or 5 or more days for children is taken, wages must be paid in advance before the leave begins. To the next one is Industrial Dispute Act 1947. It is a unit 2. So unit 1 Factories Act 1948 is over. Let's see the unit 2 Industrial Disputes Act 1947. The meaning and purpose of Industrial Dispute Act 1947 is fully deals with the act was enacted to make provisions for the investigation and settlement of industrial disputes between employers and workers. And to the next one is its main objective is to maintain the industrial peace and harmony by providing machinery for the settlement of disputes. Let's see the key features or provisions of Industrial Dispute Act 1947. So according to the section 2 subsection K deals with the industrial dispute. Any dispute or difference between employees and worker or between worker and workman which is connected with employment, non-employment, terms of employment or conditions of labor is known as industrial dispute, section 2 subsection K. And authorities under the act deals with works committee, conciliation officer, board of conciliation, labor court, industrial tribunal and national tribunal. Important provisions of Industrial Dispute 1947 deals with strikes and lockout, which means rules for lawful and unlawful strikes and lockouts, and then layoff, enrichment and closure, rights and compensation to workers, and then awards and settlements have binding nature and period of operations, and protection of workers, no unfair labor practices allowed. Let's see the objective. Promote fair practices, ensure social justice and reduce conflicts between employers and employees. To the next one is strikes and lockouts. Let's see what is strikes and lockouts. So strikes and lockouts in Industrial Disputes Act 1947, which enacted with the first one is strike in section 2 subsection Q, deals with cessation of work by a body of persons employed in an industry acting in combination or a concentrated refusal to work or accept employment by persons employed in industries known as strike. And then lockout. Lockout means the temporary closing of a place of employment or the suspension of worker or refusal by the employer to continue to employ workers. And the next one is lawful and unlawful legality. Lawful strike and lockouts deals with proper notice is given. We have to give the proper notice, and then not in violation of government orders. We should not follow the violation of government orders. And the next one is not during the pendency of conciliation, tribunal or arbitration proceedings in public utility services. And the next one is unlawful strike and lockout denotes No notice given in case of public utility services during conciliation tribunal proceedings or when a settlement awards is in operation. To the next one is Workmen's Compensation Act 1923. Let's see the Workmen's Compensation Act 1923. It focuses on the purpose of the act is fully based on enacted to provide compensation to workmen or their dependents in case of injury by accident arising out of and in the course of employment, and next one is occupational diseases and death of a workman during employment. The key provisions of employer's liability for compensation is employer is liable to pay compensation if a worker suffers personal injury by accident during the employment, if a worker dies due to an accident at work, if a worker contracts on occupational diseases, and then account of compensation depends on nature of injury like death, permanent disability, temporary disability. And next one is monthly wages of your workman, and next age of workman, and formula is given at using percentage of wages into age factor. Compensation in case of death paid to dependents, he or she, wife or husband, children and parents. Employer not liable if injury does not result in total or partial disablement for more than 3 days, injury caused due to the workman being under the influence of drink, drugs or willful disobedience of safety rules, and Commissioner for Workmen's Compensation is appointed to settle claims and disputes regarding compensation. And to the next unit is Employees State Insurance Act 1948. So Employees State Insurance Act 1948 deals with the purpose of the act to provide social security and health insurance to employees in case of sickness, maternity, employment injury or occupational diseases. It ensures medical care for employees and their dependents, and key features are contribution. So employers' contribution is 3.25% of wages. Employees' contribution is 0.75% of wages, and the total is 4% approximate, subject to changes by government. Then see the benefits under the Act. Employees are entitled to the following. First one is medical benefit. So medical benefit, full medical care for insured person and dependents, and sickness benefit, cash compensation at 70% of wages during certified sicknesses, maximum 91 days in a year. Maternity benefit, paid leave for maternity, miscarriages or confinements, and disablement benefit, compensation for temporary or permanent disablement during to employment injury, and dependent benefits, pension to dependents in case of death due to employment injury, and funeral expenses, lump sum payment towards funeral cost. And then administration managed by the Employee State Insurance Corporation ESIC, an autonomous body under the Ministry of Labour. Employee State Insurance Act 1948 let's see the objectives. To provide social security to workers in case of sickness, to give medical facilities to insured employees, to ensure cash compensation during periods of loss of wages due to sickness, to create system of compulsory insurance where both employer and employee contribute, to establish the Employee State Insurance Corporation for proper management and administration. Contribution section 2 subsection 4 deals with the sum of money payable to the ESI fund by the employer and employee, and corporation section 2 subsection 6 deals with refers to the Employee State Insurance Corporation, the body created under the Act. And last one is Employees Provident Funds and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1952 deals with objectives of the Act is to provide financial security and stability to employees after retirement, to ensure compulsory savings of employees during their period of employment, to provide support to employees and their families in case of retirement, disability or death, to establish a system of social